Welcome to Lesson 2. If you have not watched Lesson 1, please have a look at the link below and watch Lesson 1 first. Lesson 1 contains certain things that will become relevant in Lesson 2. Thank you. Beginning in Java programming course. I am Nico Michael. My career started at IBM 24 years ago. And at IBM 22 years ago, my experience in Java development began. The reason I created this course is that my approach is different to teaching Java. What you learn in 3 hours, you will forget 70% in 3 weeks. Programming is a muscle. The more you code, the stronger you get. I wanted to have a balance between theory and writing practical coding projects. Every week you will get a new lesson with a coding project. After doing enough coding projects, and if you can succeed to do this over 3 weeks, by that time you will become proficient in programming in Java.
Welcome to Lesson 2. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to install the Java JDK 11. Then we are going to create a workspace where you will keep all your Java code. And then we are going to write our first Java program. It will be a class, and we will compile this class and we will run it. In 1991, James Gosling came up with the idea to write a new language based on the C++ language, but this would be a language with differences. One of the things that he wanted to do with C++, you have a compiler that compiles for Windows. So you write your code in C++, you compile it for Windows, and it only runs on Windows. And if you have a compiler for compiling to Linux, it only runs on Linux. It will not run on Windows, it will not run on Mac, and vice versa. So to get around this, James wanted to create a language that you could write on a Windows machine that could run on a Linux machine or on a Mac or on a server. Eventually, this would also run in the cloud. By 1995, the project or the language Oak was now mature. James Gosling would have regular meetings with his team in a coffee shop where they would discuss the language over cups of Java. And after many cups of Java, James decided to change the language and call it Java. By 1995, the language was ready. I was working at IBM at about 2002, and in those days there were 2 Javas. There was the Java from Sun Microsystems, and IBM had written their own Java. A few years down the road, an Open JDK project was formed as an open source Java, whereas the Sun Microsystems, they owned the language, so that was their own product. IBM contributed to the Open JDK their Java code as well as code from developers of other companies. And over the time, the Open JDK had matured. After Oracle had purchased Sun Microsystems, they had also purchased the Java language, so they were the custodians of the Java language. Around about 5 years ago, Oracle changed the license for the Java JDK 8. At that point in time, there was a negative reaction in the industry, and many developers moved away from the Java JDK of Oracle to the Open JDK. And by that time, the Open JDK project was quite mature. When this happened, we had Open JDK 9. We are going to be using Open JDK 11. It is good enough to keep us going for the next 3 to 5 years. You have made a good choice to consider Java as a language to learn. 90% of the Fortune 500 companies are using Java. Java is the most popular language according to the TIOBE index, and according to another index, it comes up as one of the top 3 languages. So choosing Java as a career path for a programmer in 2022 is a most reasonable decision. Software developers are in short supply, and in the UK they are facing a digital skills crisis. So much so that they are having to import Java developers, especially senior Java developers. And many senior Java developers are flying over to the UK to work on their Java projects. It has become a major problem for the British, and many companies are now recruiting and searching for Java developers, senior Java developers. If you've been in this space for 5 years or more, you will be inundated with emails from recruiting companies from Britain and even in Europe. As we said, employers are on the lookout for Python, Java and SQL coders in particular. Now let's get to installing the Java language. What you are going to do is you are going to pause this video when I tell you to, and you are going to take this URL that's on the screen here now. You're going to type it into your browser, and then you're going to open it in your browser. Pause the video now. I assume that you have done that. Now let's open the browser. Now, if you're a Linux user, this is what you are going to download. This link here will bring you the JDK that you need. However, if you're running Mac, you'll use one of these two, depending on what you want. And with Windows 10, I recommend that you download this one here. I'm going to download it, but it's going to give me a different behavior because I've already downloaded it. And I've already installed it. So when you get to this point, you are going to take the wizard and follow every prompt with a next. There's one thing you need to be aware of. You need to make a note of where this JDK is going to be installed, the folder where it's going to be installed. You will need it for the intermediate and for the advanced Java courses. In the intermediate Java course, we will be installing Maven, and we need to create an environment variable where we need to identify where the Java is located. And then in the advanced Java training course, we are going to install Tomcat. And there you will need to also have a different environment variable so that when your Tomcat server is installed and starts, it knows where to find the Java. I'm now going to cancel this. You accept the licensing. Remember, this is open source code, so it's not like you have a license that you have to buy. You see over here, this is the location where the Java code is going to be installed. I'm now going to cancel on my installation, but in yours you will carry on next. But just make a note of this. The best I would recommend is to create a text file on your desktop and call it Java location, and then just put this path there. C program files, Microsoft JDK 16.8 hotspot. After installing Java, there's two things we need to do. First of all, we need to see if this thing has been installed. So you will type Java -version and press enter. You will do this in the command prompt. If you don't know how to do that, you go here and you type cmd. And that brings up the command prompt. And then the next thing we need to do, now we know we've installed Java, we need to see that we have the Java compiler. So type javac. minus minus version. Now that tells me that I have Java 11. That's the version of Java that I have installed on my machine. The 0.15 or 0.18, that makes very little difference, but it's fine. You download the latest. At this point in time, we have installed the Java and the compiler. So here I mentioned that you needed to say Java minus version and check that you have Java working as I had demonstrated to you. Now we have some prerequisites, and I would like you to do exactly what I am going to do now. We need to create a folder called My Java Apps inside the Documents folder. Depending on what Windows machine you have, or if you have Linux, I'm going to do it by opening the terminal. In Windows it'll be the command prompt, and then I'm going to create the folder. So what you see on the screen, these are the commands we are going to use. I'm going to demonstrate it to you now. So at this point in time, we had correctly installed Java. Now I need to go to the Documents folder, so CD and D. Documents. And then here I'm going to make a folder. Now, do the same on your side. Create the folder, My Java Apps, make directory, My Java Apps. On my machine, it already exists because I have my lessons there. But on yours, you would create it with that command. And every time we work, you will go there. And in the beginning, we'll use Notepad. You would say Notepad and the name of the file that you want to create. In our case, it's Hello World Java. Pause the video, copy what you see there to Notepad. Do exactly as I have done. I assume at this point you have done that. So now let's save this file. You will say File Save or Control S and then close the file. Having created the file helloworld.java, we want to compile it. We use the Java compiler, which is Javac. You will hear me talking about Javac or Javac as some call it, but I call it Javac. Just bear with me, humor me. And if there are no errors, it will compile like that. If there are errors, go back to the video and just see what you missed. I'm just going to bring up the file again, just highlight a few things. When we define a class, we have public and then class. Notice that this is in lowercase. These two words are lowercase. Notice that the hello and the world, these are uppercase for the H and uppercase for the W. That is important, and if that is the class name, the file name should be identical. So capital H, hello, capital W, world.java. And then always an open curly brace, and at the end of the file, a closing curly brace. And here we have a method. What other languages call a function. In Java, we don't use the term function. We always talk about methods. And you will find out that we talk about the main method. Also starts with an open curly brace, ends with a closed curly brace. And here we have one line of Java code, and make sure that it ends with a semicolon, semicolon, semicolon. And case sensitivity is important. So capital S there, everything else lowercase here. And then inside the quotes, that is the line that we're going to display when we run this. So this is a simple program. It's got one line. It's going to print hello world. So now that we have compiled it, let's have a look at what Java created. So there was our Java class hello world.java, and it just created us now the hello world.class file. So it compiled it. And what James Gosling wanted was that you wrote your code, you compiled it, and that class would now run on any Java runtime environment. I could compile that with a JDK that I'm using here, 11. You could compile it with a different JDK. You could compile it with JDK 12 or the latest, or even an older version of the JDK. It would compile. But that class will only run on machines that are running the Java runtime environment version 11 and greater. JDK comes with a runtime environment. So let us run this now. So to run it, we say Java, and now we only type the name of the file, but not the file extension. So hello world, but not .class. Hello world and not hello world.class, and it ran. So you see, having installed the Java JDK 11, you got the runtime environment as well. You got the Java virtual machine, so you were able to run that code on your computer. In Java, we talk about methods. In other languages, they talk about functions. So functions in Java are methods. We have two kinds of methods in Java. We have what we call a void method. This is a method that does something but returns nothing back. And then we have the other type of method where it does something and it returns something back. And that would be a type. In other words, an integer, it could be a number, it could be a string, it could return a class. The main method is something special in Java and special to Java. When you add a main method to a class and you compile and run that class, it will automatically launch the main method. And that's how the Hello World example worked. In order to make the main method work, there's some specific requirements that are needed. You need to declare it as a public method. It must be declared as a static method, a void method, and it must be a main method. So what I recommend is you take this line here and you put it onto a rubber stamp. And every time you write a new class that you want to give it a main method, you stamp that into your code. I wish it was that simple, but I think you get the idea. At this point in time, we're just starting to look at the language, and there are many types in Java. However, to enable you to be able to write code, what we have on this page is what you will use 99% of the time. There are two types of numeric variables. There are variables that store integers. Integers are numbers without decimal points, like the number of potatoes equals 5. You can't go to the store and buy 4.5 potatoes. You will buy a fixed number of potatoes, no fraction. So that is what an integer is, a number without a fraction. And then you have floating point numbers. These are numbers with fractions. So when we work with money, we will use a double, and the double will have a number with a decimal point and a fraction. So it's dollars and cents, pounds and cents, euros and cents. So that's where we use a double. Now with the integers, the int is suitable for numbers smaller than 2.5 billion. The minute you're going above that, you would use a long. When we work in banking and we're working with records in a bank, say the Reserve Bank of a particular country, you will find that you cannot use int, they will use longs. Longs are fantastically large numbers. When we declare a variable like the number of potatoes, we always start with the type. Here it's an int, the number of potatoes, that's the name of the variable. We assign it a value, so equals 5. And notice we put a semicolon at the end of the line. When we declare long numbers, these are the bigger numbers, we use a type long. The name of the variable here would be number of transactions equals. Now notice we put a number followed by a uppercase L. So that's how Java recognizes this number is a long. Do not use lowercase l. The problem with that is it's very difficult to tell a 1 from a lowercase l with certain fonts. And then, having seen the numeric variables, sometimes we also need to display a text. So for that we will use strings. We are declaring a variable called my name as a type. The type is a string, and then here notice inside quotes. Many languages use that way to declare that this is a string and assign it with the equals to a string variable. Now here's an example where we are using all that we have seen on the previous slide. In this example, we have a string called Jack the Ripper. We've already seen that, the name. Now, because the year is a 4-digit number, it's suitable to declare it as an int. We don't need to make it a long. And when we are working with money, here reward offered was 500, then we declare it as a double. Now, when you looked at the Hello World example, you saw that there was a system out print ln. We talk about a print line. So when we had a print line command, it was going to print. Now notice that here we've put a string and we have concatenated it with a variable. That means that we want to print this text together with a value inside that variable. In this case, the variable is name, and it's got Jack the Ripper. And here the variable is year, which is a numeric value, and so on and so forth. Now, lazy developers, when they want to convert numeric types into strings, they will put double quote, no space, and another double quote, and then plus the numeric variable. And that will automatically turn it into a string with the numeric variable's value. Let's go and have a look at this in code. To do that, we are going to open it in Notepad. The program is called jacktheripper.java. So you can do the same. You type Notepad jacktheripper.java and it'll pop up an empty editor that you can then copy this code into it. The class name is Jack the Ripper and the file name is jacktheripper.java. And it's case sensitive, so this name here must be exactly the same as this name here. Otherwise it won't work. Okay, pause the video now. I assume that you have done that. So now we want to compile it. So before we do that, you need to save. So you can go and say File, Save, and then File Exit, or you can say Control S and click that X. Having created the program, we now need to compile it. So for that we use the Java compiler, and you will hear me talking about Javac. So humor me. JackTheRipper.java. As you can see, there were no errors. If you got errors, I'll give you the screen for 10 seconds that you can just pause the video and then just take this code. Okay. So assume you got no errors. Then you can run this. So let's run this. In order to run this, you will say Java and the file name without the extension. So that there. So let's do that. Java. And it ran. Now I want to compare that with the code. So I'm just going to pop up the notepad again. So you can see in the first line, it said name Jack the Ripper. That's this piece of code here. And you can see that it combined the text name with the variable value. Now what was interesting, reward offered was set as 500. Remember, we're talking money and we said that you use a double for money. But when we printed it, we used this line here, reward offered plus the variable reward offered plus currency. And currency was the word pound. But it actually printed a fraction here. You see that? Now that's because you are printing a double. Now, later you will learn, we have a project called Mars Rover Simulator. And in the Mars Rover Simulator, we're going to learn how to convert doubles and set the number of decimal places to display. One more thing we want to do, having run this program and having compiled it, we would like to see what Java created. So if we look here, we see there's a file called Jack the Ripper class, and it just created it now. Today is September the 8th, and the time is 17:51. And it just created this file, jacktheripper.class. The goal with Java, as opposed to C++, was that you could compile it once and run it on any platform. So you could email this file to a friend who's running a Mac or another friend who's running Linux. Notice that my computer is running Windows. If you email that to a friend, they would be able to do the same as what we did, where they would be able to say Java and then Jack the Ripper. Every language gives you a way to be able to add comments to your code. There are two ways to create comments in Java. There's the single line. You put 2 forward slashes and then followed by your comment. So here is a single line comment. And then for a multi-line comment, you put a forward slash followed by an asterisk. And then at the end of your comment, you do the opposite. You put a asterisk followed by a forward slash. So here's an example of a multi-line comment. When you write code and you put a comment next to the code to describe the code, we call that an inline comment. And in Java, we have a standard called clean code. And this would be referred to as dirty code. The reason is, tomorrow you change my code, so you modify the code, but you forget to update the comment. And later somebody else looks at the code. Now the code here is saying a different thing to what the comment is saying. So that causes confusion, and for that reason we frown on people using inline comment. Don't use them. What we recommend to use is the multi-line comment, and there's a specific one. It's called a Java doc. What you do is you put a forward slash with 2 asterisks, and then you put your comment, and then you end it with the asterisk /. Now, technically speaking, that putting a second asterisk there made no difference because it's still a multi-line comment. It still passes as a multi-line comment. However, there's a program called JavaDoc, and it scans through all your code, and if you put JavaDoc comments above your methods and also above the declarations of your class, so you can describe what the purpose of your class is, and you can describe each method with a JavaDoc comment. And if you go in the internet and you look, you will see the JavaDoc comment for the Java language. We are now going to create our project. For every lesson that we do, we will follow it with a practical project. And this project will be based on what we have learned in the lesson. We are going to create a project called randomquotations.java. And let me expand this to have all the code. So what you do is the same as what I did here. Go into your My Java Apps folder and run this command, notepad randomquotations.java. I'm just going to make this code easier to read, and just give me a second. Just to make it easier for you to read and fewer lines of code. You'll notice when you work with the IDE in Java, it likes to wrap the code so that the lines are shorter. Now that's fine, because if you want to put it into a slide like PowerPoint, then it makes it easy to be able to fit it onto a page. Pause the video now. I assume you have created the file random quotations. We are now going to compile it. Hopefully I haven't broken the code, so let's compile it. Good, I'm relieved. And now we're going to run it. And it brought up a quotation, and I'm going to run it again. So here's something a little bit more practical for you. As I mentioned earlier, we will end every lesson with a practical project, and with time they will get more and more advanced. As I had mentioned before, programming is a muscle. The more code you write, the stronger you get.
Please click the like button and also subscribe to this channel to help this channel grow. And also have a look in the comments and click on the show more link so that you can see what other videos we have in this series of training courses. Thank you for that.